The resignation letter took Karen 3 hours to write. She'd drafted 17 versions, each one attempting to maintain some dignity while acknowledging the truth. In the end, she settled on simple honesty, a foreign concept that felt strangely liberating. To the Willowbrook Estates HOA board and community members, I am resigning my position as HOA president, effective immediately. My actions following the accident at 47 Maple Drive were unacceptable and do not reflect the values our community deserves in its leadership. I fabricated evidence, coached witnesses, and attempted to blame an innocent neighbor for my son's mistake. I have no excuse for my behavior beyond the fact that I lost sight of what truly matters: truth, integrity, and treating our neighbors with respect. I am deeply sorry to Margaret Chen and her family for the pain I've caused. Tyler Pemberton has taken full responsibility for the accident and will be working to make amends. We will cover all damages and accept full legal responsibility. I am sorry for failing you all. Karen Pemberton. She hit send at 2:47 p.m., then sat in her kitchen, staring at the now quiet phone. The absence of constant notifications and emergency calls felt surreal after 4 years of non-stop HOA drama. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Margaret Chen stood on her porch, holding a covered dish, and wearing an expression Karen couldn't quite read. "May I come in?" Karen stepped aside, unsure how to interpret this unexpected visit. They sat at her kitchen table, the same table where Karen had plotted her community center presentation just days earlier. "I read your letter," Margaret said quietly. "It was more than I expected. It was less than you deserved." Karen's voice was barely audible. "Margaret, I don't know what happened to me. I used to be a normal person who cared about her neighbors. Somewhere along the way, I became someone who would destroy lives to protect my reputation." Margaret studied her carefully. "Power does strange things to people. I've watched you change over the past 4 years. You started as someone who wanted to improve the neighborhood and ended up as someone who ruled it through fear. I convinced myself I was protecting property values and maintaining standards." Karen laughed bitterly. "Really? I was just terrified of losing control. The accident was terrible, but Tyler's a good kid. He came to our house this morning with his father to apologize personally. He's also starting work at Henderson's Hardware to help pay for the repairs." Karen felt tears building. "He's better than I raised him to be." "Actually, I think he's exactly who you raised him to be, before you lost yourself in HOA politics." Margaret pushed the covered dish across the table. "Lasagna, I made extra." The simple kindness broke something inside Karen. Tears flowed freely for the first time in years. Not tears of frustration or anger, but of genuine remorse and gratitude. "Why are you being nice to me? I tried to ruin your life." This was a complete fabrication, but Karen delivered it with such conviction that several neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Fear was a powerful motivator in HOA politics. Board member Patricia Williams raised her hand. "Karen, while property maintenance is certainly important, shouldn't we be focusing on the actual cause of the accident? The actual cause is negligent property maintenance that created unsafe conditions." Karen replied without missing a beat. "However, there's an even more serious issue at stake." She clicked to her final slide, showing a graph of neighborhood property values. "Willowbrook Estates has maintained a 7% annual appreciation rate under my leadership. Properties with visible damage, especially those involving emergency vehicles and insurance claims, can impact values across the entire development. The Chen property, in its current state, represents a threat to every homeowner's investment." The room fell silent. Karen had found their pressure point: money. These people might feel sympathy for Margaret, but they cared more about their property values. "Therefore," Karen continued, "I'm recommending that the HOA board require immediate demolition and reconstruction of the damaged structure, with costs to be covered by the homeowner's insurance. Additionally, I'm proposing a special assessment to establish a property maintenance fund, ensuring that this type of negligence doesn't threaten our community again." Margaret stood slowly, her voice shaking with rage. "You are unbelievable. Your son destroys my garage, and you want me to pay for it. Then you want to charge everyone else to clean up your mess? Mrs. Chen, I understand you're emotional. I'm not emotional, I'm furious. Margaret's voice cracked. You've twisted this whole situation to avoid responsibility. Your son admitted he was texting while driving. The police report will show. The police report will show that contributing factors include hazardous property conditions. Karen interrupted. My insurance company has already confirmed that liability is complex in cases involving structural failures. It was another lie, but Karen had learned that confidence could override facts if delivered properly. The crowd was watching this exchange like a tennis match, their sympathy slowly shifting as Karen's professional presentation contrasted with Margaret's emotional outburst. I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years, Margaret said, her voice breaking. I've followed every rule, paid every fee, attended every meeting. And now you want to destroy me because your son made a mistake. Karen felt a flicker of something, guilt, regret, but pushed it aside. This isn't personal, Margaret. It's about protecting our community. But as she looked around the room, Karen noticed something troubling. Instead of the usual nods of approval, several neighbors were frowning, their faces reflecting doubt rather than support. For the first time in years, Karen realized she might be losing the room. Because I remember who you were before you became HOA president. You helped me plant my garden when we first moved in. You organized meal trains for sick neighbors. You cared about this community without needing to control it. They sat in comfortable silence, two neighbors who'd lost their way back to each other through honesty and forgiveness. What happens now? Karen asked. Now we rebuild. Your garage, my trust in this community, your relationship with Tyler. Margaret smiled. It won't be easy, but it's possible. Karen nodded, feeling lighter than she had in years. I should probably start by apologizing to everyone else I've terrorized over the years. That's a long list, Margaret said with a slight smile, but I'll help if you want. As Margaret left, Karen stood at her window watching the neighborhood she'd once ruled with an iron fist. Children played in yards that had once been citation-worthy for grass height violations. Neighbors chatted across fence lines she'd once regulated for appropriate materials and colors. Tyler appeared beside her, his work clothes dirty from his first day at the hardware store. How are you feeling? Terrified, Karen admitted. I don't know who I am without the HOA presidency. You're my mom? You're the woman who used to make pancakes shaped like animals and help me with science projects. Tyler's voice was gentle. She's still in there somewhere. Karen smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. I'd like to find her again. Me too, Tyler said. But Mom, next time you want to be a leader, maybe try leading with kindness instead of fear. Karen looked at her son, this young man who'd somehow maintained his integrity despite her example, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The HOA would find a new president. The neighborhood would establish new norms. And Karen would discover who she could become when she stopped trying to control everything around her. But as she watched Margaret Chen wave from across the street, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that her story with the HOA wasn't quite over. There were still secrets in Willowbrook Estates, still neighbors harboring grudges and hidden agendas. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that her resignation might have created a power vacuum that someone far worse than she ever was might be eager to fill. After all, nature abhors a vacuum, and so do homeowners' associations. By noon, Karen's living room had transformed into a war room. Legal documents covered her glass coffee table, her laptop displayed insurance websites, and her phone hadn't stopped ringing. She'd already fielded calls from 3 neighbors, the local towing company, and her own insurance adjuster. Mrs. Pemberton, I need to clarify something, said Doug Walsh, the claims adjuster, his voice crackling through the speakerphone. Your son admitted to our representative that he was texting while driving. That significantly impacts liability. Karen's jaw tightened. Tyler sat hunched on the couch, his face buried in his hands. He was confused after the accident. Teenagers say all sorts of things when they're traumatized. But he signed a statement, which I'm sure was taken under duress. Karen's voice could have cut glass. My son is a minor. Any statements made without parental consent are inadmissible. She hung up and turned to Tyler, her fury barely contained. What did you tell them? The truth. I was reading a text from Jessica and didn't see the stop talking. Karen's screech made Tyler flinch. Do you have any idea what you've done? Not just to the garage, but to my reputation. I'm HOA president, Tyler. People expect perfection from this family. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll pay for the damage somehow. With what? Your allowance. Karen paced to the window, watching Margaret sweep debris from her driveway. No, we're going to handle this smartly. Margaret's garage was a death trap anyway. That roof has been sagging for months. Tyler looked up confused. But it looked fine to me. You're 17. You don't know anything about structural integrity. Karen's mind was spinning, crafting a narrative that would protect her family's standing in the community. I've been documenting Margaret's property violations for months. Poor maintenance, unsecured hazardous materials, non-compliance with storage regulations. She grabbed her tablet and began furiously typing. Emergency HOA meeting. Tonight. Margaret's negligence has created a safety hazard that endangers the entire neighborhood. Mom, this is crazy. I crashed into her garage. We should just pay. We should do what's necessary to protect this family's reputation. Karen's voice was ice cold. Your father worked 12-hour days to buy this house. I spent 4 years building respect in this community. I'm not letting one mistake destroy everything. Tyler stared at his mother, as if seeing her for the first time. What happened to you? You used to be normal. The question hit Karen like a physical blow. For a moment, she saw herself through her son's eyes. Hair perfectly styled even in crisis, makeup flawless, every word calculated for maximum impact. When had she become this person? But the vulnerability lasted only seconds. Normal doesn't get you anywhere in this world, Tyler. Normal gets you a sagging garage roof and a property value that drops every year. I've worked too hard to be normal. Her phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Karen, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Karen smiled, her confidence returning. Actually, Margaret, it's just getting started. She began drafting an email to the HOA board, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Emergency property inspection required. Structural damage reveals extensive safety violations. Immediate action necessary to protect neighborhood property values. As she typed, Karen felt the familiar rush of control flowing back through her veins. This was what she did best, turning chaos into order, finding angles others missed, protecting what mattered most. Her reputation, her family's standing, her carefully constructed world. The fact that her son was staring at her with something approaching horror didn't register. Karen had learned long ago that leadership required making difficult decisions. People might not like her methods, but they respected results. And Karen Pemberton always delivered results. Karen Pemberton was perfecting her victory smile in the hallway mirror when the thunderous crash shook her pristine colonial home. The sound of splintering wood and screaming metal echoed through Willowbrook Estates like a battle cry, followed by the unmistakable hiss of a car radiator meeting its violent end. What in God's name? Karen's coffee mug slipped from her manicured fingers, shattering against the Italian marble floor she'd fought the HOA to approve 3 meetings ago. She rushed to her front window, her silk robe billowing behind her like a cape of impending doom. Across the street, when Margaret Chen's garage door used to stand, a burgundy Honda Civic sat embedded in what remained of the structure. Steam rose from its crumpled hood while antifreeze pooled beneath the wreckage. Karen's 17-year-old son Tyler stumbled out of the driver's seat, his face pale as fresh snow. "Oh, this is rich," Karen muttered, her mind already calculating angles. As HOA president for the past 4 years, she'd built her reputation on maintaining neighborhood standards. But this was an opportunity wrapped in disaster. Margaret Chen emerged from her kitchen door, still clutching a dish towel, her face cycling through confusion, shock, and dawning horror. "Tyler? What happened? Are you hurt?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen. The brakes, they just..." Tyler's voice cracked, but Karen was already moving, her bare feet slapping against the cold concrete as she marched across the street. "Don't say another word," Karen commanded, inserting herself between Tyler and Margaret with the precision of a seasoned negotiator. "Tyler, get in the house. Now." "But Mom, now." Margaret's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the damage. Half her garage wall had collapsed. Her husband's vintage workbench lay in splinters, and 20 years of carefully organized tools were scattered like confetti. "Karen, your son just destroyed my garage. Look at this mess." Karen straightened to her full height, her voice dropping to the tone that had cowed countless homeowners during violation hearings. "Actually, Margaret, I think we need to discuss your negligent driveway maintenance. That ice patch has been a hazard for weeks." "Ice patch? It's July." "Exactly. Standing water creates mosquito breeding grounds, which violates Section 12 of our covenant agreements." Karen's smile was razor-sharp. "I've been meaning to write you up for it." Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Are you seriously blaming me for your son crashing into my garage?" "I'm stating facts. Your property maintenance created unsafe conditions." Tyler swerved to avoid Mrs. Patterson's cat. "Community animals are also a violation, by the way, and lost control because of your negligence." The lie rolled off Karen's tongue smooth as honey. She perfected this technique over years of HOA disputes, established dominance, shift blame, cite regulations. Margaret was too stunned to mount an effective defense. "This is insane," Margaret whispered. "Karen, look at my garage." But Karen was already pulling out her phone, her fingers flying over the screen. "I'm calling my insurance company. Given the circumstances, I think you'll find that your homeowner's policy will need to cover the vehicle damage. Tyler's car is totaled." The Willowbrook Estates Community Center buzzed with an energy Karen hadn't felt since the Great Mailbox controversy of 2023. Every folding chair was occupied, and several residents stood along the walls, their faces reflecting curiosity, concern, and barely concealed excitement at the neighborhood drama. Karen surveyed the room from her position at the head table, her navy blazer pristine, her presentation materials arranged with military precision. She'd spent the afternoon preparing, gathering evidence, and building her case. Margaret sat in the front row, flanked by her husband David and their daughter Amy, all three looking like defendants awaiting sentencing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "We're here tonight because a serious safety issue has been brought to light in our community." She clicked her remote, and the first slide appeared on the projector screen, a dramatic photo of Margaret's destroyed garage, shot from an angle that emphasized the chaos and destruction. "This morning, a structural failure at 47 Maple Drive created a dangerous situation that could have resulted in serious injury or death. Only by the grace of God was my son Tyler able to escape with minor injuries, with this poorly maintained structure essentially collapsed around him." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Margaret shot to her feet. "That's not what happened. Tyler crashed into my garage while texting." "Please let me finish," Karen said smoothly. "Mrs. Chen, you'll have your opportunity to respond." She clicked to the next slide, showing Margaret's garage from 3 months earlier. "As you can see, the structural deterioration has been ongoing. The roof sagging, the foundation settling, clear signs of neglect that any responsible homeowner would have addressed." David Chen stood up, his face flushed with anger. "Karen, this is ridiculous. Your son was driving recklessly." "Mr. Chen, personal attacks won't resolve this situation." Karen's voice remained calm, professional. "The fact is, your wife's failure to maintain her property created a hazardous condition. Section 15 of our covenants clearly states that homeowners are responsible for structural integrity." She clicked again, displaying a dense page of legal text. "Furthermore, the storage of hazardous materials in an unsecured structure violates both HOA regulations and county safety codes. Paint thinners, gasoline, cleaning solvents, all improperly stored without adequate ventilation or safety measures." Margaret's face had gone pale. "Those are normal garage items. Everyone stores. Not everyone stores them in a structurally compromised building that poses a fire hazard to the entire neighborhood." Karen's voice rose slightly, playing to the crowd. "The fire department's preliminary report indicates that a single spark could have ignited the entire structure, potentially spreading to adjacent properties. The first crack in Karen's carefully constructed facade appeared at 7:43 a.m. the next morning, delivered by a knock at her front door. She opened it to find Officer Martinez, the same policeman who'd responded to the accident, holding a clipboard and wearing an expression that suggested this wasn't a social call. "Mrs. Pemberton, I need to speak with you about the incident report." Karen's stomach dropped, but her smile remained fixed. "Of course, officer. Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you." "Ma'am, there's been a discrepancy in the statements. Your son initially told our responding officer that he was texting while driving, but his formal statement claims he swerved to avoid a cat. Additionally, there's no evidence of any ice patches or standing water on the Chen property." Karen's mind raced. "Officer, teenagers often misremember traumatic events. The shock of the accident." "Mrs. Pemberton, I have dash cam footage from the patrol car that responded to the call. Your son clearly states, quote, I was reading a text and didn't see the garage door. There's no mention of a cat, ice, or any external factors." The world seemed to tilt slightly. Karen gripped the doorframe. "I don't understand what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating that filing a false police report is a misdemeanor. Coaching a witness to change their statement is obstruction of justice. These are serious charges, Mrs. Pemberton." Karen's perfect composure cracked. "My son is 17. He was confused. Your son is also at the police station right now with his father, providing a corrected statement. Apparently, he couldn't sleep last night after what he witnessed at your HOA meeting." Officer Martinez's voice softened slightly. "Mrs. Pemberton, I've seen family loyalty turn into legal trouble before. I suggest you contact an attorney." After he left, Karen stood in her foyer, her hands shaking. Through the window, she could see neighbors emerging from their houses, coffee cups in hand, clearly discussing the police car in her driveway. The neighborhood gossip network would be buzzing within hours. Her phone rang. Patricia Williams from the HOA board. "Karen, we need to talk. 3 board members have called for your immediate resignation." "Based on what?" "Based on the fact that you lied to us last night. Margaret Chen has security footage from her doorbell camera showing Tyler texting while driving. She also has the original police report. Karen, you fabricated evidence at an official HOA meeting." Karen sank into her leather chair. "Patricia, I was protecting my family. You were protecting yourself at the expense of an innocent neighbor. The board is meeting in emergency session this afternoon. I suggest you prepare a resignation letter." The call ended, leaving Karen staring at her phone. 4 years of carefully built authority, gone in 24 hours. She'd survived the Great Fence Color debate, the controversial driveway expansion policy, and the infamous Christmas decoration regulations. But this was different. Tyler appeared in the doorway, his face streaked with tears. "Mom, I told Dad everything. About the texting, about what you made me say, about the lies at the meeting. I can't do this anymore." "Tyler, you don't understand the consequences. I understand that you tried to destroy Mrs. Chen's life to cover up my mistake." His voice cracked with emotion. "Dad's hiring a lawyer to make sure she's compensated for everything, and I'm getting a job to help pay for it." Karen looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw something that terrified her more than any police report or board meeting. He was looking at her with disappointment, the kind that changes a relationship forever. "You used to be my hero," Tyler whispered. "You were strong and smart, and always did the right thing. What happened to you?" Karen couldn't answer because she wasn't sure herself. Somewhere in the past 4 years, between the HOA meetings and the covenant enforcement, and the constant vigilance required to maintain her position, she'd lost sight of who she used to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. "Karen, the police told me about Tyler's confession. I'm willing to work something out without pressing charges, but only if you resign from the HOA and issue a public apology." Karen stared at the message, her options narrowing to a single point. She could fight this, hire lawyers, claim persecution. But Tyler was right. She'd tried to destroy an innocent woman's life to protect her own reputation. For the first time in years, Karen felt genuinely ashamed.